It was Thursday 14th of July 1938, and the Wimbledon Championships had ended less than 2 weeks earlier. Reigning champion, American Don Budge, won the men's singles again in style, using his rolled backhand to good effect against Britain's Bunny Austin. In the women's game, Helen Wills Moody lifted the trophy in what would be her final Wimbledon appearance. There would be just one more summer of tennis before World War II suspended play for the next 6 years. But for now, death and disaster were far from the minds of most ordinary people, and the motorist driving along the quiet, secluded Somerset Road at midnight was startled when he saw a woman's body lying in the road, illuminated by his headlights. She lay almost directly opposite a side entrance to the All England Lawn Tennis Club, just 80 yards from centre court. At first glance, a hit-and-run accident seemed the most likely explanation. Police arriving at the scene observed a tyre mark on the woman's right stocking, near her ankle, which was consistent with an Austin 7 or a Morris 8. She lay on her back in the road, her head resting on the verge in a pool of blood. She was dressed in black and wore a pair of black lace gloves, but if she'd had a handbag with her, it wasn't there now. On closer inspection, police saw that the woman's face was badly lacerated. She had multiple head wounds and, most shocking of all, she'd been stabbed in the neck. The road accident theory now took a back seat as investigators realised they were dealing with a murder inquiry. Local residents and Wimbledon ground staff came forward to tell the police that Somerset Road was known as a lover's lane, where couples would park at night for some privacy. One witness reported seeing a woman get into a green van on Somerset Road at around 11:30 p.m. that night, just half an hour before the body was discovered. This woman matched the description of the victim, who was around 5'4" with dark brown hair. Home Office pathologist Dr. Eric Gardner conducted the post-mortem, standing in for the renowned Sir Bernard Spilsbury, who was away on his summer holiday. Gardner concluded that the victim had been struck repeatedly on the head with a blunt object before being stabbed in the neck. Divisional Detective Inspector Henry and Detective Inspector Philpott of Scotland Yard were assigned to lead the investigation. Their first step was to interview all registered owners of green vans in the area. Around the same time, police received a complaint about a man named George Brain, a 27-year-old van driver from Richmond who worked for a firm of boot and shoe repairers in the West End. His employer reported that he had misappropriated £37 from the company and disappeared, but most interestingly of all, he drove a green Austin van. One day later, police located a green Austin van parked in a garage off Tottenham Court Road, 8 miles away from where the body was discovered. There were bloodstains inside, and samples were analysed at the police lab and confirmed to match the victim's blood type. Inside the garage washroom, officers discovered a handbag concealed behind some wooden boards. Also hidden nearby was a bloody cobbler's knife, which forensic testing proved was the murder weapon. The shoe company confirmed the van was theirs, and it was assigned to their employee, George Brain, who drove it daily for his duties. Meanwhile, police still needed to identify the deceased woman and printed an appeal for information in the newspaper. A 33-year-old laundry worker from Lambeth named George Robert Atkins read the article and was horrified to find that the description matched that of his wife, 30-year-old Rose Muriel Atkins. The couple had married 10 years ago, but had been separated for the last 4, and although George had not seen her for at least 2 of those years, Rose continued to visit their 2 children regularly. George Atkins visited the mortuary on Saturday 16th of July and confirmed that the murdered woman was his estranged wife. "As soon as I saw her, I knew it was Rose," he said. "She left me 4 years ago. There was another man. Our 2 children, Cecil aged 9 and Rose Lavinia aged 6, and I then went to live at my parents' home. I saw my wife about 2 years ago in Clapham Common, but she would tell me nothing about herself. She loved our children. She often came to South Lambeth and saw them as they came out of school, but she never came to the house. Only a few days ago my parents told me she met the children and made them little gifts." Rose had 2 brothers who also learned of her death through reading the newspaper. One of them said, "We're grateful our father was not alive to know what happened to her." It soon transpired that Rose Atkins had been working as a prostitute, nicknamed Irish Rose by her clients. The police launched a manhunt for George Brain, the owner of the green van, and widely circulated his description. After speaking to people who knew him, detectives began to build a picture of the man they were seeking. Described as 5'7", weighing 13 stones, with a plump red face and a double chin, he was clean shaven, had a long prominent nose, dark brown hair and blue eyes, and was dressed in a grey shabby tweed jacket and trousers. He lived with his parents, Richard and Alice Brain, at St James's Cottages in Richmond, and was due to marry 24-year-old fiancée Sissy Gadd in a week's time, a ceremony that had been hastily arranged due to her unexpectedly falling pregnant. It emerged that Brain had a habit of playing billiards and losing money at the greyhound races, so he had started stealing from his employer to fund his addiction. He had also been paying for the services of prostitutes, one of whom was Rose Atkins. Given the vicious nature of the attack, it was imperative that the police trace their only suspect as soon as possible. Detectives visited cafes and lodging houses, monitored ports in case he tried to flee the country, and received multiple dead-end tips and false sightings from the public, which kept them busy as far south as Eastbourne and as far north as Leeds. But one lead finally proved to be genuine. On the afternoon of Monday 25th of July, nearly 2 weeks after the murder, Sergeant Beaker and Constable Boot, both stationed in Sheerness, received a tip-off that a man was hiding out in a cave beneath Minster Cliffs. Acting on the information, they made their way along the rocky shoreline and entered the cave. There, they found George Brain reading a newspaper. He was arrested and taken to Wimbledon police station, where crowds gathered in heavy rain, hoping to catch a glimpse of him in the back of the police car. When he was charged with murder, Brain replied, "Yes, I understand. I'll speak the truth. It's the best way." In his statement, he explained what had happened. According to Brain, he had met Rose Atkins about 4 months ago, and had seen her several times since. On the night of Wednesday 13th of July, he was driving along Somerset Road near the tennis club when he spotted her walking along the road. He pulled up and called out to her, suggesting they have sex. She climbed into his van and they drove on a short distance before stopping in a quiet spot. At this point, she apparently told him she was struggling financially and tried to blackmail him, threatening to report him to his employer for using his work van out of hours if he didn't pay up. Fearful of the consequences and angry, George Brain slapped Rose in the face, then hit her with the car's starting handle, which was beside the seat. He made no mention of stabbing her with the cobbler's knife, which was either a stupid omission as the police had already found the weapon, or a clever move in the hope that the inconsistency of his statement would ultimately lead to reasonable doubt. Brain claimed that everything had gone blank, and he awoke later to find Rose dead, so he pushed her out of the car and drove off, which was likely the point at which the tyre mark had been transferred to her stocking. He then returned home to his parents' house, explaining to the police, "I told Mummy and Dad I was late because I had trouble with the van." He admitted that he had tried cleaning the van in the morning and had found his victim's handbag inside. He took 4 shillings from the handbag, then hid it in the washroom next to the garage, where it was found by the police. He also admitted to hiding the bloody knife there, though he maintained he could not remember using it. Police successfully matched Brain's fingerprints to the ones on the handbag. The trial began in September 1938, and Brain's defence was funded by his father and brother. His barrister, Fred Hallis, tried to convince the jury that his client had been provoked into the attack and that it should be considered manslaughter. Prosecutor McClure, however, asked the jury to consider if the degree of violence used was justified based upon the level of provocation that Hallis was claiming. When Brain said he had blacked out during the attack, the judge, Mr. Justice Wrottesley, remarked pointedly, "It is no excuse to say I did not remember doing it." The jury took just 15 minutes to arrive at a guilty verdict. Despite his bad habits, George Brain had many friends and was known as a likeable man, and as many as 16,000 people signed a petition calling for his reprieve. But the sentence was upheld, and Brain was hanged at Wandsworth Prison on his mother's birthday, 1st of November 1938, by Thomas Pierpoint. 2 weeks later, Sissy gave birth to a son and moved in with her sister. A year after the murder, a prostitute known locally as Vera the Vixen wrote to Scotland Yard telling them that she had known both Rose Atkins and George Brain. Although Brain had claimed he attacked Rose in fear of being exposed for using the company van out of hours, Vera suggested there was another reason. She revealed that he had secretly enjoyed wearing women's clothes, something that was taboo in society at the time, and she suspected that this was what Rose had threatened to tell people unless he paid her. After all, Brain was already in trouble for stealing from his employer. Would he really have been so worried about them finding out about the van that he'd killed to keep it secret? Brain's cave hideout became a popular tourist destination, but over the years, the sea has eroded the cliff. Much of it has now crumbled into the sea, swept away on the tide like the echoes of this tragic story. A story which many tennis fans visiting Wimbledon have no idea played out on the doorstep of the hallowed courts at SW19 more than 85 years ago. You've been listening to Prash's Murder Map. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a thumbs up, comment or review, as it really helps to support the show and help more people to find it. You can also join me on Patreon for audio-only ad-free episodes. Thanks for your support, and I'll see you again soon.